The afternoon sun streamed through the window of the new apartment, reflecting off the open boxes and Sophia's scattered toys. Beatriz breathed a sigh of relief. For the first time, that small space felt vast, a home made of her own choices. As she arranged the pictures, she heard the doorbell ring insistently. Her heart raced. No one knew she had moved except her sister. Paula entered uninvited, her expression thick with suppressed anger. "So it's true?" she asked, looking around as if her new home were a personal affront. Beatriz tried to smile, calmly explaining that she needed a space of her own, but her sister cut her off with a brusque gesture. "You're not going to run away from your family, you hear?" Sophia watched from the doorway, hugging her blanket of blue clouds. The air grew thick. Beatriz took a step back, trying to stop the argument from escalating, but Paula advanced, her voice trembling. "You're selfish. You always have been," she shouted, moving closer until their faces were almost touching. A second of silence was enough. The sound of the slap shattered the air like a dry explosion. Beatriz's face turned, and the metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. Sophia wept silently, curled up. Beatriz brought her hand to her face, surprised more by her sister's fury than by her pain. "Go away, Paula," he managed, his voice breaking. His sister hesitated for a moment, breathing heavily, before spitting out one last insult and leaving, slamming the door. The sound echoed through the empty apartment. For a few seconds, the world seemed to stop. Beatriz breathed deeply, her body trembling, feeling the throbbing heat on her skin. Sophia ran to her, sobbing, "Mommy, are you okay?" And that small touch on her arms made Beatriz's heart reassemble. She hugged her tightly, feeling that somehow that snap had broken something, but also freed it. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. The clock read 4:12 p.m. when Beatriz noticed the detail that would change everything. The security camera, discreetly installed above the closet, was flashing red. It had recorded everything. The slap, the words, the violence, everything. She stood in front of the camera for long seconds, the blood drying on her lip. A feeling of mixed relief and fear washed over her. For the first time, she had concrete proof of what she'd tried to explain for years, but no one believed. The camera had seen it all, and this time, the silence would be broken. While cleaning her face, Beatriz went to the bedroom and found Sophia asleep, still clutching the blanket. She sat beside her and stroked her hair, promising softly, "Never again, my love. Never again will anyone scare you like that." The words came out firmly, like a vow. Outside, the city was still alive. Horns honking, laughter, a dog barking. Inside, Beatriz stared at her laptop screen, ready to save the video. Her fingers trembled, but her gaze remained steady. Fear still lingered within her, but something new was beginning to emerge. And when the file finished loading, she understood. That video wasn't just proof of an assault, it was the beginning of a liberation. How many people live trapped in families that confuse love with control? If you believe that no one deserves to suffer in silence, sign up now on the channel and follow real stories of courage, pain, and liberation. Because sometimes, the first step to freedom is having the courage to hear the truth. The next morning, the apartment looked different. The light streamed in coldly, reflecting off the clean floor, but there was a strange, almost artificial stillness. Beatriz made coffee while watching Sophia draw at the table. The child made circular strokes, always circling a female figure with outstretched hands, a protective mother. Paula didn't show up. No message, no phone call, but Beatriz knew her sister's silence was just the prelude to the family storm. She grabbed her phone, opened the video, and watched it again, this time without tears. Every second confirmed what she'd been trying to deny for years. Paula couldn't bear to see her free.
Work that day was a forced distraction. The students talked, laughed, and she smiled mechanically. But deep inside her, a decision was beginning to form. That night, as she lay in bed, she grabbed her phone and recorded a voice note to herself. I'm going to report it. For me. For Sophia. For the woman I've always tried to be. On the third day, the first call from her parents. Her mother cried, saying Beatriz was destroying the family with her rebellion. Her father, cold, asked her not to take things so seriously. The old pattern repeated itself. Guilt, silence, fear. But something inside her resisted. I have proof, she replied calmly. On the other end, silence. Curious, Sophia asked what was wrong. Beatriz gently replied, sometimes the people we love make mistakes, and the hardest part is pointing out the mistake without hating the person who made it. The girl grew thoughtful, hugging the blanket. Beatriz realized how much those words were also a reminder to herself. Later, she reviewed the video a third time, pausing on each frame. Paula's look in the moment before the slap, full of frustration, anger, and sick love, made her shudder. She doesn't hate me, she thought. She just doesn't know who she is without controlling me. The clock struck midnight when Beatriz saved the video to a flash drive and hid it in her bag. Fear no longer held the same form. It was now fuel. For the first time, she slept without nightmares, even though she knew the worst was yet to come.
Outside, the rain began to fall, fine and steady. And between the drops on the glass, Beatriz swore to herself the next crack she would hear would be the door opening to freedom. The alarm clock rang at 6 in the morning, and Beatriz woke up with heavy eyes from a nearly sleepless night. Her face still ached, a silent reminder of the recent violence. In the bathroom mirror, she watched the fading bruise and wondered how long she'd been carrying unseen wounds. She took a deep breath. She had to go to work. Sophia refused coffee and asked not to go to school. The children will ask about my aunt, she murmured. Beatriz knelt and held her daughter's hands. You don't need to explain anything, my love. Mommy will take care of it. Her voice was calm, but her heart pounded with guilt. On her way to work, the world seemed too normal. Cars, laughter, life. Beatriz felt out of place, a woman walking in a landscape where everything pretended to be peaceful. During class, her mind wandered between her paintbrushes and the video saved in her bag. Each stroke she drew was an attempt to expel the weight that accompanied her. During recess, she took refuge in the teacher's lounge. She turned on her laptop and watched the video again, without sound this time. The images alone were enough. The pain was raw, but now, strangely, liberating. Beatriz realized that, for the first time, she didn't see herself as a victim. She saw a woman amidst the chaos, but standing tall. That night, Sophia had a nightmare. She screamed her aunt's name, crying. Beatriz hugged her, her heart breaking. She won't hurt you anymore, my love. I promise. Sophia, sobbing, asked, Are you going to fight with Grandma too? And Beatriz didn't know how to respond. Sometimes the truth weighs too heavily on a child. The next day, her childhood friend Julia showed up unannounced. She brought flowers and a worried look. You need to react, Bea. I know what happened. People saw the video in the school group. Beatriz froze. What do you mean, in the group? Someone leaked it. The secret was already out. Shame burned in her chest, but with it came an unexpected strength.
"Then the world will see what she did," Beatriz said, her eyes welling up. Julia held her hands. "Use this. Don't run away." The words echoed deeply. Later, alone, Beatriz turned on her cell phone's voice recorder and began recording her feelings. "My name is Beatriz, and this is the last time I'll let anyone silence my truth." Her voice trembled, but the words came out clear and sincere. As the audio recorded, a feeling of lightness washed over her. Fear transformed into narrative, and narrative into power. The trauma was still there, but now she was shaping it with her own hands. Across town, Paula was receiving messages, people commenting on the video, calling her an aggressor. And for the first time, the silence was changing sides.
On Sunday, Beatriz woke before sunrise. She made coffee and opened her laptop. She had spent the night reading about domestic violence reports and protective measures. Each article mirrored her own pain, and each story seemed to whisper, "You are not alone." She decided to call Julia. Her friend answered sleepily, but firmly, "Let's go to the police station together, Bea. Today." Beatriz's silence lasted a few seconds. Then she replied, "Okay." Her heart raced. It was the first time she had said those words without hesitation. Before leaving, he looked at Sophia sleeping and left a note on her pillow. "Mom went to take care of something important. When I get back, everything will be fine." Beatriz kissed her daughter's forehead and left. The morning air seemed lighter, almost complicit. At the police station, the cold atmosphere and the smell of old paper made her tense. The police chief listened to her story attentively and watched the video. When the sound of the slap echoed, he looked up, serious. "You have courage. This changes everything." Beatriz felt her body relax, a single tear falling. She signed the police report and received instructions on the protective order. The flash drive was kept in a sealed manila envelope. As she left, Julia hugged her. "Now it's official. The first chain has been broken." On the way back, the now high sun illuminated the streets and the hurried people. Beatriz realized that the world was moving on, indifferent to the suffering of others. But inside her, something had stopped, a feeling of helplessness. That afternoon, she received a call from her mother. The voice on the other end was sharp. "How could you do this to your sister? She's devastated." Beatriz took a deep breath. "Mom, she attacked me." The silence was heavy, followed by a whisper, "You're being ungrateful." Beatriz hung up without answering. Sophia, seeing her mother crying, came over and held her hand. "You're not ungrateful, Mommy. You're brave." That simple phrase healed more than any medicine. That night, Beatriz opened her notebook and began writing down what she had experienced. She called the file Freedom. The first words came slowly but surely. Courage doesn't come from nothing. It comes from fear, when fear tires of winning. And for the first time, Beatriz felt she could take a deep breath without feeling guilty. Beatriz received her mother's message on a rainy Sunday. "Come home, we need to talk. It's important." The tone was urgent, and her heart sank. She knew what awaited her, family court. Still, she went. A part of her still wished that, by some miracle, someone would defend her. Her parents' house smelled the same as always, stale coffee and old storage. Paula was already there, sitting on the couch, her eyes red, her face drawn, but still with her chin held high. Her mother walked around the living room with a cloth in her hand, avoiding direct gaze. Her father, silent, looked like a judge about to deliver a sentence.
"Have you lost your mind?" the mother began. "You reported your own sister to the police? That's shameful, Beatriz." Her voice was thick with tears. Paula was crying softly, feigning regret. Beatriz stood still, trying to remain calm. "I didn't do anything she didn't deserve. I was just defending myself." Her father finally spoke. "You've always had this rebellious spirit, Beatriz, always wanting to do everything yourself. Now you're reaping what you sowed." The words cut deep. Beatriz took a deep breath, trying not to let herself be overcome. "Father, I just want peace, that's all. I'm not asking for money or help, just respect." Her mother slammed the table. "Respect! Respect is what we've given you your whole life, and this is how you repay it?" Beatriz realized that dialogue was futile. Words wouldn't penetrate the walls of denial. She stood up, tears held back. "You never wanted me to be free, only obedient." Paula stood up too, her eyes flashing. "You destroyed our family." "No," Beatriz replied firmly. "The family was destroyed when you thought it was okay to silence me." The silence that followed was deadly. Her mother began to cry. Her father looked away, and Paula turned her face away, her pride wounded. Beatriz grabbed her bag and walked to the door. Before leaving, she looked back. "I still love you, but love isn't about accepting being hurt." The phrase hung in the air like an echo of rupture. She stepped outside and breathed in the cold street air, feeling her body light and sad at the same time. In the car, the tears came unabated. They weren't tears of guilt, but of grief. Grief for a family that never existed the way she dreamed. When she got home, she found Sophia drawing colorful hearts. "For you, Mommy," the girl said. Beatriz smiled. Perhaps the new family would begin there, with a blank sheet of paper and love without violence. On Monday, Beatriz woke up early. She felt strangely lucid, as if the argument with her parents had lifted a veil that had covered everything. She decided to organize the evidence. She opened the folder on her computer and began putting together what she would call the dossier. The videos were there, the slap, the messages, the voice chats in which Paula humiliated her, the blackmail audio. Each click was a plunge into bitter memories. But this time, Beatriz didn't cry. She watched like someone collecting fragments to reconstruct a story, her own.
Julia showed up to help. She brought coffee and a new flash drive. "Let's store everything in 3 different places," she said matter-of-factly. The two worked in silence for hours. The sound of the keys mingled with the rain outside, creating an almost therapeutic rhythm. Beatrice began to remember other episodes: the yelling as a teenager, the criticism disguised as advice, the constant comparisons to Paula. The violence had always been there, but disguised in phrases like, "It's for your own good." When the clock struck 6 in the afternoon, the archive was complete. Videos, screenshots, audio, call logs, everything was labeled, dated, and secure. Beatrice looked at the screen and murmured, "Now no one can erase me." Julia smiled. "You can't imagine how many women needed to hear that." That night, while Sophia slept, Beatrice listened to some of the old audio recordings again. Paula's voice said, "You'll never achieve anything alone." Beatrice paused and whispered, "I did it." The power of that simple answer sent a shiver through her entire body. Before going to sleep, he wrote in his diary, "Freedom is not a place. It is a sequence of decisions that hurt before they heal." In the silence of the early morning, he looked at Sophia sleeping and felt peace. The security camera blinked red, now not as a threat, but as a symbol of vigilance, of self-control, of autonomy. And when she closed her eyes, Beatrice realized that the fear had switched sides. It no longer lived within her. It lived within those who had underestimated her. The following weeks were a mix of normalcy and tension. Beatrice tried to maintain her routine, taking Sophia to school, making dinner, pretending everything was fine. But at night, the silence revealed what the days hid. Sophia began to have nightmares. She cried, screamed, woke up calling for her mother. One morning, she ran into her room and found her in a cold sweat. "She was here, Mommy. Aunt Paula was here." The girl trembled, her eyes lost between dream and memory. Beatrice hugged her tightly, feeling her heart shatter. "She can't touch you again, my love. Never again." The next day, she took her daughter to school, but the teacher noticed the girl's blank stare. She called Beatrice to talk. She's scared, withdrawn. She said she was afraid of her aunt. Maybe it would be a good idea to seek psychological help. Those words hurt, but they also opened a new door. Healing began with care. Beatrice made an appointment with a child psychologist. During the first session, Sophia drew the scene of the slap. On the paper, a woman with a sad face and a child hugging a blue blanket. The psychologist looked at Beatrice and gently said, "She doesn't need to forget. She needs to understand that she's safe now."
The words echoed inside Beatriz for days. At night, while washing the dishes, she thought about how many times she herself had pretended to be safe when, in truth, she was trembling inside. Now she saw her daughter repeat the same gesture, the cycle she had vowed to break. One night, Sophia asked, "Mummy, why did Aunt hit you?" Beatriz swallowed hard. "Because she was mad that I wanted to be free." The girl frowned. "But being free isn't wrong, is it?" Beatriz smiled with tears in her eyes. "No, my love, it's what we most deserve to be." In the following days, the nightmares diminished, but the distance between mother and daughter grew. Beatriz noticed the silent fear in Sophia's eyes every time someone knocked on the door. It was as if the whole world represented a threat. One night, when she saw her daughter sleeping with the blanket covering her face, Beatriz had an uncomfortable thought. If I don't fight for justice, she will grow up believing that fear is normal. The idea struck her like a bolt of lightning. She decided there, in that silent room that smelled of childhood, that it wasn't enough to just report the crime. She needed to face it all, to the end. And for the first time, fear didn't paralyze her. It gave her direction. The next morning, Beatriz woke with a purpose. She put on a simple outfit, tied up her hair, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face still bore emotional scars, but her eyes, those tired eyes, now shone with something new: determination. Julia arrived early, as promised. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" Beatriz took a deep breath. "I've waited long enough." The two of them rode the subway in silence, side by side. Each station felt like a step toward a future Beatriz wasn't sure she could handle yet, but she had to face it. The women's police station was packed. Women of all ages, their faces drawn, their eyes suspicious. Beatriz sat and waited to be called, observing the surroundings with a lump in her throat. She didn't look any different from them. They were all fighting for something similar: dignity. When she entered the police chief's office, her hands were shaking. She handed over the flash drive and the police report, and with a shaky voice recounted everything. When the sound of the slap echoed through the room, the officer looked at her respectfully. "You have courage. This isn't easy." Beatriz simply nodded, her eyes welling up. As she signed the papers, she felt a strange relief, as if with each signature she were rewriting her own story. At the end, the police chief said, "You will receive a protective order within 48 hours, and you are not alone."
As she stepped outside, the sun seemed brighter, the air lighter. Julia was waiting for her outside with 2 coffees. "So? It's over. Or it's just started." They both laughed silently, a tired but genuine laugh. On the way back, Beatriz looked out the bus window and saw women crossing the street, mothers pushing strollers, little girls laughing. She realized that each of them might be fighting an invisible battle, and she felt proud that she was finally fighting her own. At home, Sofia ran to hug her. "Was everything okay, Mommy?" Beatriz smiled. "It was. We're safe now." The girl clutched the blanket tightly, but this time she smiled too. At night, Beatriz wrote in her diary, "Today I denounced it. Not just her, I denounced the fear." And he finally started to lose his voice. Before going to sleep, he opened the window and let the wind in. It was as if freedom had a scent, a mix of rain, courage, and new beginnings. News of the accusation spread like wildfire. Beatriz didn't know how, but the video of the slap began circulating among family groups, co-workers, and neighbors. Within hours, the silence turned into a collective murmur. Some supported her, others condemned her. Years of pain became the subject of whispers. The first blow came from her mother in a short message, "You broke up with your sister." The second came from her father in a cold voice, "Don't show your face around here anymore." Beatriz read the words on her phone and felt a mixture of anger and relief. It was as if, in being rejected, she had finally been freed. Paula, in turn, reacted furiously. She invaded Beatriz's social media, writing posts full of victimhood, saying that the ungrateful sister had destroyed the family for attention. Cruel comments began to appear, and Beatriz decided to mute all notifications. Julia insisted she not answer. "They want to make you retreat, Bea. They want you to feel guilty again." Beatriz nodded, but her heart ached. That night, she cried hidden in the bathroom, trying not to wake Sofia. "Why is it so hard to free yourself without being hated?" she whispered to the mirror. The next day, she received a call from the police station. The protective order had been approved. Paula was legally barred from approaching. Beatriz took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, she felt her body relax. Still, the fear didn't disappear, it just changed form. The neighbor, a lady named Lydia, appeared with a simple cake and a shy smile. "I saw what happened, my daughter. You did the right thing." Beatriz cried in her arms, surprised by the unexpected kindness. "I thought everyone would judge me." "Those who have suffered recognize courage," the old woman replied.
As the world spoke, Sofia slowly began to laugh again. He began drawing again, this time with brighter colors. In the new drawing, there were two figures holding hands, with no shadows behind them. Beatriz hung it on the wall like an invisible trophy. At work, some colleagues avoided her. Others discreetly praised her attitude. The history teacher in particular said quietly, "You broke the cycle, Beatriz. Don't let them make you feel ashamed of it." When she got home, she opened her computer and wrote, "They try to silence me again, but each attack is just more proof that I did the right thing." And when he closed his laptop, he noticed something new. The sound of fear was fading, replaced by a faint hum of freedom. The proceedings moved quickly. Beatriz's lawyer, a calm and experienced man, gathered the evidence and scheduled the hearing. "We have everything we need," he said, placing the flash drive on the table. "But you need to be emotionally prepared. The trial stirs up old wounds." Beatriz nodded. She was no longer the same woman who trembled when she saw the camera flashing red. Now she knew the weight and power of truth. "I just want peace," she replied, "even if it costs me everything." On the eve of the hearing, Sofia handed her mother a letter written in large, shaky letters. "Even if they scream, I know you're right. I love you." Beatriz wept, hugging her daughter tightly. That simple piece of paper contained the entire reason she fought. The next morning, she dressed soberly, a white blouse and dark pants. Julia accompanied her to the courthouse. "If you ever want to leave, I'll take your place," her friend said. Beatriz smiled. No, I need to be there. For me and for her. The courtroom was cold and silent. When Paula entered, their eyes met. There was anger, but also something new. Fear. The judge called for silence and began the session. Beatriz stared intently, her hands in her lap, her heart racing. Paula's lawyer tried to change the narrative. He said the video merely showed a family disagreement. Beatriz almost laughed. Disagreement? He thought about how many times he had heard that word used to justify aggression, humiliation, and shouting. When the judge asked to play the video, the air in the room seemed to freeze. The sharp sound of the slap echoed like thunder. No one breathed. Paula looked away. Beatriz felt her body tremble, but she remained erect, as if the weight of that sound were now the seal of her liberation.
After the screening, silence persisted. The judge looked at Beatriz and said, "That's enough." The lawyer concluded his speech calmly. Julio squeezed his hand. "You did what you had to do." As she left the courtroom, Beatriz looked up at the cloudy sky and smiled. Justice hadn't yet handed down a sentence, but inside her, the decision had already been made. I would never again live in anyone's shadow. The courtroom was packed that gray morning. The sound of shoes echoed down the hallway, mingling with the distant hum of voices. Beatriz entered, her face serene, but her heart pounding. There was no anger, just a deep weariness, the kind of exhaustion that arises when someone has fought too long for something simple: respect. Paula sat with the lawyer, her face drawn, her heavy makeup trying to hide her fear. When their eyes met, Beatriz saw not the sister she loved, but the woman who tried to destroy her so she wouldn't have to face her own monsters. The courtroom began the session. Beatriz's lawyer presented the videos, audio, and messages. Each piece of evidence was a piece of the story that for years no one wanted to hear. The sound of the slap echoed once more. Sofia, sitting next to Julia, lowered her head but remained firm. She wanted to see her mother win. Paula began to cry. "She provoked me," she said, her voice breaking. "She always made me feel worthless." The lawyer tried to soften the words, but the judge interrupted. "You physically assaulted your sister in front of a child. That's not provocation, it's violence." Beatriz watched everything in silence, her hands trembling, but her gaze steady. She no longer needed to justify anything. The truth spoke for itself, and, for the first time, it echoed where it mattered. During her break, she went to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection showed a tired but whole woman. The fear that had once consumed her now seemed small. "You made it this far," she murmured to herself. Upon returning to the courtroom, the judge gave the final word. Considering the evidence presented and the damages caused, this court acknowledges the assault and orders compensation for moral damages and permanent removal measures. Paula lowered her head. Beatriz felt her heart race, but she didn't vibrate. She just breathed. Hot tears flowed, not of triumph, but of release. Julia hugged her, whispering, "It's over, Bea, it's over." As they left the courthouse, Sofia held her mother's hand and asked softly, "Can we be happy now?" Beatriz smiled. "Now we can begin."
The sentence fell like a bombshell among relatives. In the family group, there were long messages, accusations, and selective silence. The mother sent a crying audio message. "You destroyed everything we built." The father didn't respond. For Beatriz, it was the sound of the door closing for good. In the following days, the local press briefly mentioned the case.
Woman obtains protective order against sister after years of psychological abuse. Her name was not released, but people knew. The neighbor greeted her with respect. The silence was now accompanied by admiration. Paula disappeared from social media. The lawyer informed her that she had paid the compensation and moved to another city. Beatriz felt a bitter relief, as if a part of her had also left. Still, she knew it was necessary. With the money, she paid a down payment on a new apartment, small, sunny, and close to work. When the key turned in the lock for the first time, Beatriz felt that sound. Simple, metallic, was the sound of freedom conquered. Sophia ran through the empty rooms, laughing loudly. "Is this our castle, Mommy?" Beatriz smiled. "Our home." The echo of laughter filled every white wall, and for the first time in years, the sound of joy didn't seem forbidden. That night, the two slept on the floor, on makeshift mattresses. The security camera was reinstalled in the living room, now facing the door. Not out of fear, but as a symbol of self-vigilance. "We'll never let anyone invade what's ours again," Beatriz thought. Days later, she received an official notification. Paula had complied with all legal measures and could no longer approach her. Beatriz looked at the paper and put it in an envelope, along with Sophia's letter and the old note left on her pillow. They were the documents for her reconstruction. As time passed, the bad dreams faded. Sophia slept peacefully, and Beatriz began working on art projects with women victims of violence. The scars became ink, and the pain, history. One Sunday afternoon, while painting with her daughter, Beatriz realized something extraordinary. For the first time, she didn't feel anger, only gratitude. Gratitude for having survived. Gratitude for having chosen to live. And the family empire, which had previously seemed unshakable, collapsed silently, giving birth, amidst the rubble, to a whole woman. The new apartment smelled of fresh paint and promise. The large windows let sunlight flood the empty rooms, and Beatriz found herself smiling to herself as she heard the echo of her own footsteps. It was small, but everything there belonged to her. And that was enough. Every white wall seemed to beg for a new story.
Sophia ran barefoot, exploring the space as if it were an enchanted kingdom. "Can I paint my room lilac?" she asked excitedly. "Yes, but you'll help me yourself," Beatriz replied, laughing. The two spent the day painting, leaving colorful handprints on the walls. Laughter replaced the silence that had previously dominated their days. At dusk, they sat on the floor eating pizza, the box propped up on a stack of books. Beatriz looked at her daughter and felt her heart lighten. "Do you know what this is, Sophia?" "Our home." "Yes, our home, and no one can take that away from us." In the following days, a routine began to settle in. The sound of the blender in the morning, the conversations before school, the smell of soap on clean clothes. Simple things, but for Beatriz, they represented a rebirth. The chaos of before was now just a distant memory. On a sunny Saturday, she reinstalled the security camera. She placed it on the bookshelf, pointing it at the door. This time, the flashing red light didn't scare her, but rather filled her with pride. "Now I control what comes in and out of my life," she thought. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, she sat down with her laptop and began writing. Not about the slap, but about what came after it, the decisions, the discoveries, the small victories. She called the text, "The Taste of Freedom." As she read the first few lines, she wept. Not from pain, but from relief. Each word seemed to wash away a little more of the old shadows. It was as if her voice, previously silenced, was finally heard clearly. she received a message from Julia. They're opening a support group for women who have experienced violence. Do you want to tell your story? Beatriz hesitated for a few minutes. Then she typed, "I do." The following Sunday, she took Sophia to the park. The wind was light, the trees were swaying, and the girl was laughing on the swing. Beatriz closed her eyes and thought, "Freedom has the sound of a child's laughter." And for the first time, the future didn't scare. It seemed possible.
The auditorium was small but cozy. Beatriz waited at the side of the stage, her heart racing. The event brought together women with similar stories, survivors, mothers, daughters. The theme was Reborn After Pain. When her name was announced, applause echoed. She stepped onto the stage and took a deep breath. The lights seemed too hot, the microphone heavy. "My name is Beatriz," she began, her voice trembling. "For years, I lived thinking that love and control were the same thing, until the day I broke the silence with a slap." The audience fell silent.
She told her story, not with resentment, but with serenity. She talked about Sophia, about her fear, about the process, and about what came after. She said that true courage lies not in confronting others, but in continuing to believe in yourself when no one else does. As she spoke, she saw discreet tears in the audience. Women looked at each other, recognizing themselves in their words. Each story seemed to ignite a small flame of empathy. What had once been pain now became a bridge. When she finished, she received a standing ovation. Julia came on stage and hugged her. "You've become what I always knew you were, a whole woman." Beatriz smiled, her eyes welling up. For the first time, she didn't feel like a victim. She was a voice, she was strength, she was healing. After the event, a young woman approached. "My father is just like your sister. I've never been able to tell anyone." Beatriz took her hands and replied, "You're not alone. And when you decide to speak out, your life will truly begin." That night, at home, he wrote in his diary, "When pain becomes a word, it ceases to be a prison. Today I realized my freedom wasn't the end of the story, but the beginning of many." Sophia slept on the couch, hugging her blue blanket. Beatriz tucked her daughter in, turned off the lights, and stared out the window. The full moon illuminated the room, and she thought that perhaps the universe was finally at peace with her. And though the past still echoed from time to time, it no longer hurt. It was just a reminder of where she would never return. It was a quiet Saturday morning. The sun streamed through the curtains, casting golden streaks across the floor. Sophia slept on the couch, the blue blanket tucked around her feet. Beatriz prepared coffee, listening to the gentle sound of the kettle. Peace was now routine, a miracle that had previously seemed impossible. She turned on her laptop to respond to some work emails. Among the messages from students and automatic notifications, there was one that caught her eye. The sender was anonymous, but the name in the signature field made her heart skip a beat. Paula. For a moment, she considered deleting it without opening it. The past was resolved, stored in its place. But curiosity, and perhaps a remnant of an invisible bond, made her click. The email was short, without flourishes, without long explanations, just bare words, as if ripped from within. "Beatriz, I know I don't deserve to be heard, but I need to say, now I understand everything I did to you. I'm sick and alone. I don't want your forgiveness, just that you know I regret it. I hope you're well. Paula."
Beatriz read and reread those lines several times. She didn't cry. She didn't feel angry. She felt only a slight emptiness, the kind of silence that comes after pain has run its course. She closed the notebook slowly, letting the words settle in her mind. She walked to the window. The cool morning wind brushed her face. Outside, the world went on as usual. Cars passing, children playing, a dog barking. Time didn't stop, and she didn't want it to. She picked up his cell phone and recorded a voice note, not to send, but to keep. I forgive you, Paula, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to live in peace. His voice sounded firm, clear, definitive. Then she went to Sophia, who was still sleeping, and sat beside her. She looked at her daughter's serene face and realized that this was the true miracle, to see innocence blossoming again in a home where fear had once reigned. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Life, she thought, is made of echoes, and some must fall silent so that others can be born. The sound of the slap that had once haunted her now seemed distant, dissolved between the wind and the silence of the new mornings. Beatriz smiled. He took out his diary and wrote the last sentence of his story. Freedom was not the end, it was the beginning of me. Beatriz found strength where before there was only fear and turned a slap into freedom. If this story touched you, sign up now and continue following stories of overcoming that show that self-love is the greatest new beginning there is. Because in the end, the pain passes, but the courage remains.